there is a hidden force more dangerous than evil itself. One that Dietrich Bonhoeffer believed was responsible for immense destruction during World War II. Unlike evil, this force cannot be reasoned with, exposed, or even fought directly. It spreads silently, rendering people blind to truth and immune to logic. That force is stupidity. But why did Bonhoeffer see stupidity as a greater threat than evil? Why did he describe it not just as an intellectual failure, but as a moral and social crisis? In this video, we'll break down Bonhoeffer's insights, helping you recognize the signs of stupidity in others, and perhaps even in yourself. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, born in February 196, was a German Lutheran pastor, neo-Orthodox theologian, anti-Nazi dissident and resistance fighter. For years, he tried to change minds. He spoke out against growing hatred, blind obedience, and the way people turned a blind eye to the cruelty happening around them. He believed that if he could just make them see, just make them understand, they would wake up. But no matter how much evidence he presented, no matter how clear the truth was, people refused to listen. One evening, after years of resisting the regime, he returned home to find his father waiting for him, with a heavy heart. Two men were in his room. They had come to take him away. Locked in a prison cell, Bonhoeffer had nothing but time to think. He had watched his country, once a land of poets and thinkers, descend into a mob of cowards and criminals. He had seen friends, neighbors, even intellectuals surrender their morality. Not because they were all evil, but because they had stopped thinking. And then he realized the real enemy wasn't malice. It was stupidity. There were reasons. He considered this a greater threat than evil, which I will now discuss. Evil, according to Bonhoeffer, can be confronted, it can be exposed, fought, and even defeated. There is always a way to resist it, because at its core, evil knows what it is. Even the worst of people, deep down, recognize that what they are doing is wrong. This is why evil carries within itself the seed of its own destruction. It leaves behind a sense of unease, a lingering guilt that can be exploited and overturned. But stupidity is immune to logic, blind to reason, and deaf to truth. It does not engage. It simply refuses to see. You can argue with a malicious person, but you cannot argue with the stupid one, because they do not recognize facts. They dismiss them, they do not debate, they mock, and most dangerously, they are utterly convinced of their own rightness. This is what makes stupidity more dangerous than malice. Malice can be countered, but stupidity is impervious. Martin Luther King, Jr.B., said something very similar. Nothing in the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. The most terrifying aspect of stupidity is that it often operates unconsciously. People who act foolishly do not even realize it. They believe they are right. They cling to their views with such certainty that no argument, no evidence, no rational explanation can shake them. Instead of questioning their beliefs, they double down, becoming even more rigid. As Mark Twain famously said, "Never argue with stupid people. They will drag you down to their level and then beat you with experience." We have all encountered different kinds of stupid people who use dismissive slogans. Whenever we try to engage with them, they say things like "whatever" or "I don't care," their way of avoiding the reality of their own stupidity. It is frustrating, much like dealing with a narcissist, because they will never change. But the danger of stupidity extends beyond the individual level. It spreads within society like a sickness. It infiltrates groups, movements, and systems that demand obedience. The power of one depends on the stupidity of the many. This is why mass stupidity so often accompanies rising authoritarianism. People do not lose their intelligence. They surrender it. They give up their independence in exchange for belonging. They stop thinking critically and start repeating whatever they are told. And once a person has surrendered their mind, there is no limit to what they can be made to do. They will commit evil and never see it as evil. They will spread lies and call it truth. They will destroy lives, convinced they are on the right side of history. This is why stupidity is not just frustrating, it is dangerous. It is a weapon in the hands of those who know how to use it. And perhaps the most chilling realization: you cannot fix it with reason. To combat it, we must first understand the true nature of stupidity. Stupidity does not question itself. It does not feel doubt or shame. It moves forward with absolute confidence, and in doing so, becomes an unstoppable force, in service of whatever it is chosen to follow. Bonhoeffer saw this firsthand. He lived in a nation, once known for its poets and philosophers, Germany, the land of Goethe and Beethoven. And yet he watched, as it turned into a nation of cowards and criminals. He saw ordinary people, many of them intelligent and educated, surrender their ability to think, and instead blindly follow the Nazi regime. This is why Bonhoeffer argued that stupidity is not an intellectual defect, but a moral one. A person can be brilliant in thought, yet utterly foolish in action. Consider Martin Heidegger, one of the greatest philosophers of the 20th century, who, despite his intellect, pledged loyalty to the Nazi Party and remained unrepentant until his death in 1976. He was smart, but he was also deeply stupid, as according to Bonhoeffer. By contrast, a person can be intellectually slow, yet profoundly wise, moral, and kind. Intelligence and wisdom are not the same. Stupidity, as Bonhoeffer saw, it is not a lack of intelligence, it is a failure of moral courage. And one is not born stupid. One becomes stupid. How that happens is what I will discuss next. Stupidity is a state of mind that arises when a person surrenders their responsibility to think. It is not an inborn trait, but a transformation, a condition that people allow themselves to fall into. This transformation is not merely personal, it is social. Stupidity thrives in groups, where independent thought is discouraged, where people simply follow orders, conform, and submit to prevailing narratives without question. Bonhoeffer observed how the Nazi regime turned ordinary people into unthinking followers. They were not inherently evil, nor were they necessarily unintelligent, but they stopped questioning. They let go of their ability to discern truth from falsehood. They became tools of a greater agenda. Bonhoeffer described this phenomenon as almost a sociological law. A similar transformation was depicted by George Orwell in 1984, where Big Brother brainwashed people to the point of limiting their very thoughts. The regime did not just control their actions, it made them stupid, so they could no longer think properly. Bonhoeffer made the same observation. When power rises, stupidity spreads. Under the influence of authority, whether political or ideological, many people willingly relinquish their inner independence. They accept the slogans, the propaganda, the oversimplified explanations, and they no longer see the world for what it is. And this is where stupidity becomes most dangerous. It is stubborn, yet passive. The stupid person does not think for themselves, yet they are fiercely convinced they are right. When confronted with facts or logic, they do not reconsider. They resist. You are not dealing with a person. You are dealing with the slogans and catchphrases that have taken possession of them. This is why Bonhoeffer argued that stupidity is harder to combat than evil. A stupid person will repeat lies, even after they have been disproven. They will cling to falsehoods, because they are no longer thinking for themselves. And this is precisely why a stupid person cannot simply be instructed or argued out of their stupidity. They must be liberated. Until that happens, debate is pointless, but there is a way to avoid falling into the seemingly innocent trap. If stupidity is not an intellectual deficiency, but a form of mental enslavement, then how can one avoid it? How can a person ensure they do not fall into the trap of blind conformity? This is what I will discuss point by point. Bonhoeffer warns that people become stupid when they give up their ability to question, analyze, and think independently. The first step to avoiding stupidity is to refuse to stop thinking. Always ask questions, challenge authority when necessary. Do not accept something as true just because it is widely believed. If an idea cannot withstand scrutiny, then it is not worth believing. Stupidity is a social phenomenon. It thrives in environments where people conform without thinking. Whenever you find yourself agreeing with a group simply because it is easier, stop and ask yourself, am I thinking for myself, or am I just going along with the crowd? History has shown that When large groups of people stop questioning, disaster follows. Do not let the comfort of belonging override the necessity of truth. This same mentality was criticized by Friedrich Nietzsche, who called it herd mentality. According to both Bonhoeffer and Nietzsche, anyone who seeks to become a true intellectual, or Nietzsche's Übermensch, must reject blind conformity. Stupidity is often the result of external influences, propaganda, misinformation, and emotional manipulation. Leaders who rely on stupidity use tactics designed to bypass critical thinking. They appeal to emotions rather than reason. They promote simplistic explanations for complex problems. They discourage independent thought and label dissent as dangerous. If an idea is presented in a way that discourages questioning, it is likely designed to manipulate, not to inform. Stupid people gravitate towards simple, black and white explanations. But reality is complex. The truth is often inconvenient, uncomfortable, and difficult. If an answer sounds too easy, it probably is. If a leader tells you that all your problems have a single cause, they are lying. If a movement demands and questioning loyalty, it is dangerous. Real wisdom comes from embracing nuance and resisting the urge to oversimplify. Bonhoeffer believed that stupidity cannot be overcome through instruction alone. It requires liberation. People trapped in a system of manipulation and conformity must first be freed externally before they can free their minds. But true wisdom comes from internal liberation, blind loyalty, and unquestioning obedience. The only way to avoid stupidity is to commit to lifelong intellectual and moral independence. This was Bonhoeffer's theory of stupidity, a warning to all of us. The world today is filled with misinformation, herd mentalities, and blind loyalty to political figures, ideologies, and narratives that discourage critical thought. If we do not actively fight for independent thinking, we will not just be battling stupidity, we will be ruled by it. The choice is ours. Stay alert, stay critical, stay free.